Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Just a quickie. We're not going to be here for too long. Good morning. Welcome to Coffee Moaning, Monday morning. Welcome if you're listening on podcast. Hi. Hope you had a good weekend, guys. We'll do more of a substantive catch-up tomorrow. I think Edward Bevington, as you correctly said, Hannah is, Nadia's friend Hannah is on Lorraine this morning. It could well be happening in the next, I think 9:25, I think she's scheduled to be on. Hannah, Edward, thank you. Which is obviously a very emotional and meaningful thing that's happening. So sending all of our love to Hannah in the hope that all of this pressure and publicity will encourage NHS England to sanction and allow or strike a deal so that Inhertu can be used by the many women and men and future women and men who need it. So obviously Nadia is along. She's not on, but Nadia is alongside Hannah, holding her hand and just making sure she's okay, navigating all of that. So I just briefly wanted to just come on really and just touch base with you guys. Obviously, the news is. We're at a curious moment in the news at the moment, and we don't just do news often, we do sort of topics, like the hyper-situated Andrex toilet rolls there. Happy belated birthday to Margaret O'Brien. Happy birthday to you too. I hope you're well. Faith, that sounds interesting. Amazing weekend at the Talking Pictures Film Festival in St Albans. Fantastic. Did you see any films? And is Talking Pictures, is that the kind of old films, the kind of classics and all that? I think that's the channel that Dina watches, isn't it? Anyway, I want to cut to the chase. One of the things I want to talk about is I don't want to speculate. We're not here to speculate because I think that's part of the problem with the whole Kate Middleton story. I just want to ask some of your opinions because me and Nadia love to hear what your thoughts are, what your takes on things are. Sometimes we're rattling through topics and we share your thoughts. Hi, Zoe. Hope you had how's your head? Hope you had a very successful St. Patrick's Day. I saw lovely photos of you and your sister yesterday on Instagram. Kate Middleton. Why do you think this is happening? Hi, Jar Brit Knit. Why do you think this has happened? Do you think this is? Do you think this is, the speculation, the story, the shocking, as you say, Kathy Hyde kind of conspiracy theories, all of the kind of ideas around whether it be her health physical, her health mental, or her health romantically? Why? Why? Why is there such a feeding frenzy? Why are people not satisfied with the fact that, as they've said, come Easter, she'll be out and about doing her public engagements again? I just want to know, why is this happening? Morning, Victoria Moore. Hope you're well. Full-on Lurgyville at Jar Britnit. Paula Farron at FAS, because we are just plain nosy. The Country Pumpkin. People are worried that the curse of the Princess of Wales will strike again. It's funny you should say that because I kind of flagged that thought up, or even something like that phrase of, oh my God, aren't there horrid parallels? Does the curse of the Princess of Wales reach further back beyond Princess Diana, or is this a sort of thing? Is it being in the shadows of the awfulness that happened to Princess Diana? Let's have a look here. Edward Bevington. People want truth from the establishment. It's interesting that, isn't it? This idea that we demand the truth, and yet when we're possibly given a certain amount of the truth, if it doesn't satisfy us, we demand more. It's also a curious one, isn't it? Because I think in the aftermath of Princess Diana's tragic death, there was an enormous endeavour and effort to kind of clear up the media, to remove the ability or the suggestion that the press could hound and drive someone to a cataclysmic end. And what's happening in this case is that it's not the baying media insofar as it's the baying masses, isn't it? It's the populace, it's the proletariat, it's the population at large, it's the civilians, or what do they call them? Our subjects, the plebeians, That's us lot. That's us lot. It's us, isn't it, doing the demanding and the speculation, and it's global. And of course, there's something addictive about it for those who are speculating. Victoria Moore, what do you say? Victoria Moore says, I think William is pushing against the press, not Kate. He's trying to prove a point of some kind. I know what you mean. I think there's a sort of principle involved here. And I think I think there's some argument to be had for him to dig his heels in and stand firm. But if he doesn't name it, and if he doesn't say that that's what he's doing, or say that's what he's doing, then, speculation will just continue. And if anyone there in the royal family was to say, I'm doing this because actually I'm proving a point, would that help? Okay, here's a question. What could they say, or what could they do to quieten down the conspiracies? Because I'm pretty certain that come what may, the first time, it's not even the press, Alison Fisher, that's not leaving them alone. I think it's social media. I think in many regards, the press has become about the social media speculation. I mean, it's an indirect way for the press to have their cake and eat it, for sure. But here's the thing, what's this Country Pumpkin? There was apparently a curse on Catherine's that's not on the throne. That makes a lot of sense when you look back at previous Queen Catherine's. No, really? Here's the thing. So whatever piece of media content they give us, now let's imagine she attends something on, say, I don't know, Good Friday, or she releases an image that's not photoshopped, or there's a statement. Is that going to be the end of it? No. Everyone is going to analyze and forensically unpack whatever is offered up. And that will in turn feed another 1,000 possible lines of and avenues of thought. If there's a flick in her eye, or a wink of her eyelid, or a twitch of her cheek at anything at any point, I don't think it's going to be enough. So Melissa Wallington, it's because people expect transparency from the royal family. At least we have some sort of openness from the king, but there's nothing in information about what happened to Kate. So are you suggesting, Melissa, which I think a few people feel, that perhaps what they need to do is say what has happened? You're absolutely right, Kerry Goodwin. The press whips up socials. Because as far as I'm concerned, whatever is going on for her, why is it? I don't see why it's my right to know. Why? I feel really sorry for her that there's this going on, and I'd imagine that she's probably being quite protected from the extent to which, I mean, unless she's on Instagram herself, or TikTok, or Twitter, or whatever, I'm sure they're probably trying to protect her as much as they can. But my fear is that transparency. Say they say something today saying, okay, she's had this procedure, or she's doing this and this is it. Is that going to stop it? Is that going to stop it? Gloria Chesham, if they say she's had a hysterectomy, is that going to stop it? I don't think so. I think everyone, but you wonder, don't you? Did the king make a good fist of giving us enough information, but not telling us everything? Are they entitled to any privacy whatsoever? Rachel Greenwood, why the hell do they need to explain to us what's going on? I agree. And so, parallels with Diana. I mean, Princess Diana's brother was speaking over the weekend, and in fact, Princess Diana's Princess Diana's brother also is behind the other story that I want to do, or topic I want to do, which is boarding schools. And he was saying that he thinks things were much more dangerous around the time of Princess Diana. And I think I kind of understand what he means on one level, insofar as I think things were more physically and literally dangerous, because you could have packs of paparazzi driving fast down, as we know happened, and potentially, did they not cause the crash and all that kind of stuff, or create an atmosphere in which the crash was more likely to happen? Was the hounding of a much more sort of physical and invasive manner? And so things, and lots of kind of, rules and regulations and sort of, just sort of checks and balances have been put in place to stop that from happening so much now. I would disagree, though. I would argue that I think things are more insidiously dangerous now for someone like like Catherine Kate. If say there is anything else going on in her life, and this is just, so say she's just had a procedure, but there are other aspects of her life that aren't particularly, brilliant or perfect, or she's struggling with. Let's not forget, she's a relatively normal kind of, she came from, okay, she wasn't poor, but she wasn't royal, was she? Her uncle was on Big Brother, for God's sake. So, and so then speculation has reached way beyond. I mean, speculation has reached way beyond whether she's had an abdominal procedure or not. And so, if any of this gets to her, this could work in a much more insidious way. It's like there's that. I don't know why. In my mind's eye, I'm seeing Princess Diana with all these long lenses and flashing bulbs chasing her, but with Kate, I'm seeing a dark room with the flashing bulbs or not flashing bulbs, but the sort of the blue light of iPhones and social media platforms and pinging notifications and all that kind of stuff. So that whilst, in the royal household, they might bring in the newspapers and she's not in the papers so much, but there's the speculation. Do you see me? That could be more damaging. I think that could be more damaging. Oceanic Therapy London. No one ever needs to share their personal health, mental or physical information with the world, regardless of who they are. Entitlement by all about what should be shared. What did Edward Bevington say? I can't see. I feel sorry for Princess of Wales. She had a very invasive surgery that she should be allowed to recover from in private, says Faith Goodman. It will never end. The internet will internet, says Amy Celeste. They could tell all, but people will not be satisfied on a little. That's my point. I don't think there'll be any satisfaction with whatever information they would give us. They are an institution, says Melissa Wallington, that has been around for years, so they need to be more open than anyone else. We look to the royal family for guidance on certain issues of importance to us or them. But do you not think, like an unravelling jumper, if they open their mouths and share a little bit more, then we'll want a little bit more, and then a little bit more, and a little bit more. Kerry Goodwin, I think it feels like it's got worse since America took an extra interest with Meghan and Harry. I know what you mean. It seems to have sort of multiplied the interest. Judge and jury hath spoken, says Edward Bevington. Spinner's End 77, are the British people okay with being in the dark? The British press have an invisible contract with them. Never complain, never explain, says Victoria Moore. I think she's with Hannah, Gemma. She's with Hannah, who is doing a chat on Lorraine this morning. I think never explain, never. Maybe this is a kind of tug of war for survival. And what's happening right now is they are just digging their heels in, and they are going to sit pretty and ride this through. I think my advice would be just don't change the course. Don't change your course. Moving on, boarding school. Anyone been to boarding school? Anyone know anyone who's gone to boarding school? Again, this is Earl Spencer talking about how he believes he thinks he didn't develop emotionally due to the abuse and the treatment that he received whilst at boarding school. Boarding school is always something. I remember when I was a state primary, and my headmaster, I remember, said to me something like, they used to do this in those days. They'd share stuff with you as a kid because they didn't have the protocol of going to parents. They said something like, we think you could get a scholarship to go to Latimer Upper or something. I don't know if Latimer Upper was a boarding school, but anyway, I had this idea that it was, and I've always sort of held all the way through university and college. I went to state school, state comprehensive. I always had this strange sort of romantic idea of boarding school. I think that's what Harry Potter spoke to, was, with friends all the time and in halls of residence and, wow, and it's going to be sort of brilliant, friends for life and all that malarkey. I thought it would be just lovely and romantic. What I didn't realise is that actually for the children who are sent off, it is often a source of trauma. Not always, but often. And in fact, it's such a source of, in a sense, hidden trauma that many kids or people who go to boarding school will have had the capacity to see their experience as negative beaten out of them by the system. I don't mean literally, but sometimes literally, but beaten out by the system because the system is about promoting the system. And so I was drawn to this because I thought, wow, yeah, I've often had this line. I remember working with someone years ago, and she was sent to boarding school. And this was in a sort of unrehabilitated sort of days when one just said stuff and you didn't really sort of, we weren't overly careful about tiptoeing around these things. And I remember saying to her, did you feel sort of rejected by your parents? It was very insensitive of me, but I mean, it was a more sensitive conversation because I was concerned for her. I said, did you ever feel, and she sort of paused, like she'd not really thought about it. And as she did think about it, she said, actually, yes, I did feel pushed to the side. And I've always wondered and I've always thought and I've always considered, or part of it, and I know this isn't the case for everyone, and apologies if someone has sent their kid to boarding school and you've done it for other reasons. My line on it is always, why have kids if you want to just send them away for so much of the year? I don't understand that. Aaron Bullimore, it's just rich parents who can't actually be bothered to parent, or parents who think it's some sort of social upscale to send your child away. I think you're absolutely right, and I can think of that. I mean, I think, when our girls first went to school, we wrote about this in our homeschooling book. I think me and Nadia both made them. I mean, Nadia went on and off to, I think, some private schools and then state schools. I was state school all the way. Met lots of kids who'd gone to private school when I was at college and university. And sadly, as you moved higher up education, you were surrounded by more and more people who'd gone through private school, certainly, and a few that I met who went to boarding school. One of the things I think you mistakenly made, and we mistakenly made, it was a huge mistake, and we own it. We say we made the mistake of thinking that by sending your kid to a private school and paying for it, you would buy a better education. Especially around here, the schools are diabolical. It's really, the results are bad and all that kind of stuff. Wow, what a mistake we made. Just because you're paying for it doesn't mean it's brilliant. And actually, we discovered and evolved and moved over time that in fact, quite the opposite was the case. That not all, but some private schools, they systematize and they strangle any kind of individuality in your children. So boarding school for me was always something where I thought, why have kids if you want to do it? Look, Clodagh Egan, hi Clodagh, my sister asked to go to boarding school. Now look, some kids, you'll never be able to know whether it was a better or a worse option. It may well have been, in the end, the better option because, you might have been in a sort of brutal, brisk and harsh environment at home. But I find the whole boarding school thing... Anyway, so I looked into this. So Earl Spencer, you think, okay, privileged, rich, lots of people. I think it's interesting, isn't it? Saltburn, one of the most successful films of last year. A huge fascination and obsession with how the other half live and social... But when it comes to the actual emotional consequences of being posh, at that point we don't want to know. It could account for why we're chasing poor old Kate Middleton. Ellery Jones, that's very sweet of you, sweetheart. She's just gifted a member. And I think Amy Celeste, you've won it. There you go. But when I went to, there is actually a whole thing called Boarding School Survivors Therapy for ex-boarders. And there's a thing called Boarding School Survivors Syndrome and Depression. And it says here, it should not be a surprise that adults who, when they were children, were exiled from family life, brought up for 9 months of each year within an institution which took the place of their parents, it should be no surprise that they exhibit symptoms of abandonment and trauma. Characteristically, male ex-boarders learned not to trust their feelings, and especially their vulnerability, and suffered profound, though often barely visible, wounds. People who were sent away to boarding school often show effects resembling people who have suffered the most deprived and neglected childhoods. Let's just pause with that. People who were sent away to boarding school often show effects resembling people who have suffered the most deprived and neglected childhoods. And this, I think, speaks to something quite important about what I've been saying a lot ever since COVID and everything, about the lack of humanity, or what feels like an emotional density to the Conservatives and the ruling classes, if you like, which is they don't seem to understand things empathetically. And I think if we sign up to this idea, as we've talked about with Israel, where hurt people, this idea that if you're abused, not always, not everyone, but you can hurt other people because it's what you've learned, it's what you've been taught, it's what you've seen. This begins to make sense of the likes of Boris and the likes of Rishi, who perhaps just stand there perplexed when anyone stands opposite them saying, yes, but this is how this feels and this is what this does to me emotionally. What? They've, in a sense, boarding school rulers or people who, leaders, have been so sort of systematically kind of, numbed to their own emotional kind of feelings that they can't really be aware of anyone else's. This is me being very favourable. I mean, I'm not trying to psychoanalyse I'm not trying to give excuses to the Tories. I mean, at the end of the day, it's like hurt people who hurt people, the hurt people who hurt people are fucking hurtful. So stop hurting. Because someone I know often says this. Why do people say that as an excuse? Oh, well, they did this because they not everyone who had something bad happen to them does something bad. So, that's a good question, Trina Cotton. What did boarding schools do in lockdown? And what did those parents do? God, did they have to have little Johnny and little kind of Hugo sent back? Grace Ann Martin, to me, it's no different to putting your kids in care. If you don't want the responsibility of bringing up your children, then don't have any. I mean, I have to say, I feel that. And I actually go further to say, I think what it does is very damaging to this country because actually it's those kids sent to those high-end boarding schools that have the privileges in society, but they haven't got any privileges emotionally because they haven't been shown any. And in fact, we are being run and strangled and damaged by essentially, in inverted commas, abused elite who have been shown no capacity to feel real emotions or limited capacity to feel real emotions. And we're all paying the consequences of that. Because, why? Because they want little Hugo to be kind of, he needs to get on the board of the FTSE 100 and all that kind of stuff. Do you know what I mean? They don't live in the real world, but they have real world consequences. They have real world consequences. So I think, again, I do feel compassion for these kids. Edward Bevington, sorry, little sympathy. I know these types of people, they're mostly knobs and look down at the workers. Yeah, this isn't about actually, I'm not sitting here saying we need to be sympathetic because the last thing they need or want is our sympathy. But I think it's always handy to understand. And I think in understanding, we take some of the power away from them, I think. Rachel Greenwood, little Hugo will be a jumped up little prick when he goes. And those little Hugos often become quite big Hugos, often with a kind of cauliflower ear, standing in a corner, placing their penis in a pint of Boddingtons. That's what I've noticed. Faith Goodman, one of our friends loved boarding school, but I think I would have hated it myself as I was bullied in comprehensive school. So to have it 24/7 would be awful. Absolutely. I mean, imagine the pressure and all that kind of, all of the kind of initiation ceremonies and teasing and dob-dob-dib-dib and all that kind of malarkey. Oh, good grief. Okay, and finally, I just want to talk about why the hell does Katie Price just not stop driving? How has Katie Price had so many run-ins? And I'm staggered by this when one goes on a speeding course for doing 23 in a 20-mile-an-hour limit area, and you run the risk of getting 2 or 3 points on your licence unless you go. Whereas Katie Price has, she's been banned from driving 6 times, was fined 880 quid this week for driving with no licence or insurance, was handed 8 more penalty points, but only has 11 penalty points. How has she only got 11 penalty points after being banned from driving 6 times? I mean, it's odd. Can someone somewhere hide the keys? Please. She seems to, it's almost like you tell her she can't drive. She needs to drive even more. Yeah, just throw away the keys, hide the keys, or dismantle the car, or let down the tyres, or something. Hi, Nenad. Excited in 2 hours you're going to watch Ghostbusters in a press screening. Let us know. I'm so looking forward to that. Banned 6 times. And she's still, but I don't understand how there's, us civvies are kind of getting the threat of 3 points for every time you go 23 in a 20. and she's band-aid. I don't get it. Anyway, that's your lot. Head over to, hopefully, Hannah is on Lorraine any minute now. Sending you all love, guys. Have a lovely day. Some more vloggage will be landing later today.